it's been really exciting to actually go back and listen to a couple of the podcasts that you have done in the past and to understand more about the program.
Really? Which one you listen to?
I listened to the woman from the Veterans Affairs Office who provides services for veterans that are experiencing PTSD. That one was really emotional, actually, towards the end. She was so passionate about what she does. And then the other one that I listened to is the Navy SEAL, who's created the nonprofit for non-medication oriented treatments for PTSD. And that one was also very intense. And some of these people have really dedicated their lives to helping veterans, which I really was very moved by, actually.
Mikael Vega is who you're talking about. Yeah. We went deep on that one. Because I think for him, it was really personal. And great. I'm glad you did the research because I did mine.
Well, that's good.
Well, first thing I want you to do, Marty, is, as Spectrum's S6, I want you to send me one of those things for free cable that I know your shop has, and you can hook me up with. And I want HBO, I want Stars.
Gotcha.
I want the whole thing. No, I'm kidding. I don't have Spectrum. I don't think you're one of the ones that's offered in my area anymore. I know. Where do
you live?
Stafford, Virginia.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, that might be Cablevision. I don't know. No, actually, Virginia would probably be Cox.
It's Cox, yeah, Cox and Verizon.
And
so
Verizon.
Verizon's I think you guys are towards Fairfax. So I do think I had Spectrum or Charter at the time during that time. Well, one of the first things we do here at Borne the Battle is when we always ask everyone, when and where did you know that the military was going to be the next phase in your life? And I ask it that way because, of course, Vietnam veterans, they didn't have the choice to enlist. Sometimes they were drafted. So for you, Marty, when was the first time that you knew that the military service was going to be the next step?
I was actually in high school. So my grew up in rural South Dakota. Parents didn't have a lot of money. But I was, had relatively good grades. I knew I was probably going to go into some sort of technology field, but I had to figure out how to pay for college. Mm-hmm. So my guidance counselor said, hey, and I didn't have any military background. No one in my family had been in the military. I literally knew very little about it. My guidance counselor said, there's this great program. They're looking for people who want to go into technology. They're looking for women. It's called ROTC.
Not Y Tech or not a tech school. It's like, it's called the military.
I know. And I was like, what? And my guidance counselor, who was really concerned that he was worried that maybe I might, because faced with the financial challenges of going to college and trying to pay for it on my own, that I might not go. So he said, just apply for this, right? Is that kind of what happened with you as well?
100%. Son of a logger.
Yeah. Yeah. And my parents were, my mom was a teacher. My dad was a salesman. It wasn't like we were destitute, but there wasn't a lot of extra money laying around to pay for college. And so I applied for an Air Force ROTC scholarship, went through that whole process, was offered the scholarship, was able to choose within certain criteria where I wanted to actually go to school. And so I decided my parents were thrilled. Of course, they didn't have to worry about paying for anything, but they were also really proud of the fact that they would have someone in the family who would actually go into the military, which we'd never really had before. So, accepted the scholarship. And my university that I went to is called Drake University. It's in Des Moines. But my ROTC detachment was at Iowa State. So massive, huge school. And so I started learning. Part of what you go through at ROTC is you learn what is the military. And a lot of people already know it if they have military backgrounds, but of course I didn't. So the first 2 years you go to class. It's one of the classes that you attend and you learn all about what it is to be in the military, and you learn about war tactics, and you learn about the chain of command, and you learn about what it is to be a military person. And that first 2 years is like your decision period.
Okay.
So for people who have been through ROTC, you spend the first 2 years learning about it. And then at the end of the second year, you make your decision about whether or not you're going to become a commissioned officer.
Was the first 2 years a full ride? Was it a full ride all 4 years? And then at 2 years, you make a decision, and then it's either A, you keep going and get the rest of the full ride, or B, it's like, well, hey, thanks for trying out. And Okay.
Yes,
Gotcha.
that
Gotcha.
exactly when I went through it. Now this is back in the 80s, the late 80s. So it may be different now. And at the time it was a 5-year commitment. And so I don't remember what would have happened if I had stopped after the 2 years. Would I've had to pay that tuition back? I don't think so. I think it was
No, I
basically
think it was a,
make your
yeah.
decision, but then the next 2 years are up to you if you decide not to become a commissioned officer. So I actually got my commission after my sophomore year of college, and then spent the next 2 years finishing up getting my computer science degree and also getting my ROTC training.
Very good. Very good. Systems engineering chief. There's a lot of systems in the Air Force. I assume space, cyber, aircraft, base systems, infrastructure. What did you work on specifically during your time?
Well, when I went in, I actually chose. There were a number of different choices. You get to choose your top 3 or whatever, and I chose Space Command, which was
wow.
I know.
You must be thrilled what's going on right now in the DoD with Space Force and everything.
It is. It's really exciting, actually. It's bringing a lot more attention to it, for sure. So I chose to go to Space Command at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. Of course, Colorado's beautiful. What's not to love? I didn't have. What I didn't do was I didn't travel a lot. So I stayed in that one place for about 5 years. And I worked on, when you say systems, I worked on satellite tracking systems.
Wow.
So, we have satellites, thousands and thousands of satellites orbiting the Earth, performing all sorts of different services, military services, communications, television, just about, anything you can imagine. And there is a platform, at least there was when I was in, that monitors all of the satellites that are orbiting the Earth to make sure they don't run into each other. And to also make sure that they don't hit
satellite air traffic control.
Traffic control, yeah. Okay. And some of them can move and some of them can't. So if there is, for example, a piece of debris up in space and the satellite we give them, the person who is operating the satellite or the organization, we give them a warning. We say, look, looks like you could potentially experience some damage from this. You could either move your satellite or just know that this is coming, right? Sometimes satellites can move, sometimes they can't. So, and then they also come down eventually. So over the lifespan of a satellite, eventually that satellite's going to come down. And so we would also start to detect that the Earth's gravity is starting to pull that satellite closer and closer into, losing its orbit, and it would basically come down to Earth. And that's natural, right? Burned up. Yeah.
How, what's the life cycle of a satellite?
Oh gosh, I don't even know if I would know anymore. I mean, that was a long time ago. So back then,
roughly.
20 years maybe.
Got you. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Super interesting.
Yeah.
So you give a warning like, hey, you're kind of in our space. Like, you guys had things that would knock down satellites if it would damage stuff?
The satellite, there are some satellites that you can take down, and then some don't have that capability. So, and frankly, this is going to be a little dated because I haven't really kept up with all of this.
Sure.
But I was a software developer. So I worked on the software that would run that platform. I wasn't part of the operational unit. So up in Cheyenne Mountain, which is where the operational unit was, there was a war room, if you will, of terminals where the operational officers and enlisted people actually did the monitoring. And that was shift work. So there was a 24-hour shift work that those people would come in and actually, execute on the operational piece of the work.
Have you seen the airman video about the Cheyenne base?
No, I need to see that.
Okay.
I have not.
After this interview, I will send it to you. Okay. I promise I will send it to you.
That would be great.
Incredible. It's good stuff. The Airman magazine, they do it. It's DOD, it's Air Force. They do a lot of really great cinematography in their stories, and
wow.
I'll send it to you. It's all about Cheyenne. So if you were there, you'll love it.
Oh my God. Yes. And so I didn't spend a lot of time up there because I wasn't part of the operational unit, but I did have to go at the time and take these huge software tapes up there. So that's how we did upgrades at the time. Now it's all in the cloud, right? So it's like a reel of tape, and the actual code is on the reel of tape. And my job was I didn't actually take the tape up there because it was classified. So my job was to drive up there, go into the Cheyenne Mountain complex, into the computer back room, and install the tapes and run the software upgrade. And that would take a couple of hours. I had to do that in the middle of the night. So that was part of my job. It was so much fun. I loved it. I know it's not a typical military experience, and it wasn't, super intense in terms of life or death, but it was really fun. It was really interesting to learn about what the operational teams did, and to be a part of that. And it was, if there was a defect, we had to go down and fix that. If it didn't work, we were on the hook.
Yeah, and technology is, sometimes the little tipping point on what gives us the advantage over the enemy. So no, it's life or death. Okay, but it's still super important, and it's still a target for the enemy. If that's why Cheyenne is Cheyenne. And I might even post that video in the blog for this interview on blogs.va.gov. What years were you in, Marti?
I was in from 1989 active duty till 1995.
Okay. You said you had a blast. You did 5 or 6 years. Yep. So you didn't travel much, no deployments during your time. Why did you decide to get out? Was it travel?
No, it was the reason why I decided to get out. And I actually did go to the reserve for another 5 years. So, okay. Including my RT, I have about 12 years of service. But the reason why I decided to get out was the pace of innovation at that time. Now, I'm sure it's probably different now. The pace of technology innovation at that time was in the military was very slow.
It hasn't changed.
Okay, well, that's too bad.
In 2015, from a video production standpoint, seeing what was the difference between civilian and the government, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah. Well, I know you worked in a pretty technology intense role as well, doing all the videography and stuff like that. So yeah, I worked on a program for satellite defense that, I worked on it for 2 years, and it ended up getting canceled. And, we'd go through these long periods where we would define the requirements, then do the design. And then by the time we actually got to the development, the program was no longer needed. So Gotcha. For me professionally, I just felt like I needed to work at a place where the speed of innovation be faster. And that's why I left.
Hit a ceiling, ready to go for new adventures. Gotcha. Yeah. While you were in though, give me either a best friend or your greatest mentor.
Well, I'll give you a couple. So my first boss, his name is Brian. He, being new to the military, right? I was pretty green. I was a little tentative about what I was supposed to be doing. He was, he's just a typical military captain, tough as nails, like physically tough. Probably could have been a Navy SEAL, but he wasn't. And he was just very serious and very dedicated, cared about people that were working for him. And so he really taught me, this is how you do it. This is how you become a military officer. This is how you do it. You do it in a way where you're tough, you do the work, you're dedicated, but you care about your team. And so that was the first one. And then the second one was, so because we were in part of NORAD, we had Canadian people there as well. So we got to interact with Canadian officers, Canadian enlisted people. And one of my higher level bosses a little bit later on was a Canadian colonel. And he was a specialist in client server software development and very advanced for what the military was working on. And he was trying to really foster the idea of getting away from these big mainframes and getting more into client server. Now, of course, everything's changed, right? But he was,
but he was pushing the envelope.
And I really thought, wow, and he was like a mad scientist too. He was a military officer, but he was also he was just very invested personally in technology and making things work and moving things forward. And then also just a very caring person. When I left, he made me a clock, a handmade clock with signatures from all of the people that I worked with. And I still have that. It meant so much to me that he did that for me when I left. So anyway, That's two. And I could probably think of a whole bunch more. I have a friend named Pam. She's also military. She was in the Army. She was a JAG, and she actually retired from the Army as a major not too long ago. And she is another, female mentor. She's also been my friend for 30 years. But she is so tough and just so smart. And she actually got deployed to Afghanistan for a year when her daughter was 8. And so what a challenging thing that she had to go through during that time.
Yeah. How do you do that? As a mom,
Yeah. I
hands off.
know. She's
Hats
definitely
off
a
to
hats
them.
off that she was strong enough to do that,
Yeah.
and made sure that Allie, her daughter, was taken care of. And I know that they try to, I guess they just try to stay in touch as much as possible, and try to have video calls or whatever you can, to try and stay in touch. But yeah, so she's also just somebody I look up to as someone who really, I did not get to the point where I could retire, but somebody who really persevered even with a busy, career, even with a family, and actually was able to retire from the Army. It's just fabulous to me.
Outstanding. So you got out in like 95,
Mhm.
96,
Yeah,
right?
right around 95, 96.
What was it like? Because I always ask people in Vietnam, and you always know there's no like, hey, VA was this, and the nonprofits, and there wasn't all that support, and then I interview a lot of folks that are in 2000, post 9/11, that are, hey, there's all these services, and it was a struggle, but there's all this support, and the
Support.
VA is this now. What was it like in 95, 96, peacetime, that era, as far as like getting out? What day one as a civilian, what did you do?
Well, I had a little bit of an easier transition, I think, than most people, just because I happened to be lucky.
Yeah.
But there wasn't really a lot of support. There were resume writing workshops that you could go to. They did have a transition program at
Yeah.
Peterson Air Force Base where I was. There was also, because I happened to be an officer, there was also a recruiting company that was very focused on recruiting officers out of the military into technology. So I happened to get lucky, and I happened to meet somebody from that company through the transition program at Peterson Air Force Base. And so I was actually recruited into a technology company.
There's luck, of course, you
Yeah.
say luck, but there's also some preparation to be ready for that luck. What kind of preparation did you do to be ready to be lucky?
um, wow. Did I do a lot of preparation? I mean, I was pretty young back then.
Sure.
I definitely, I was very focused on my technology skills and leadership skills. One of the things that was helpful, and like, I shouldn't even say the word helpful, like critical, important to my sort of future career, was the leadership experience. So
Mm.
when I was in the Air Force, I spent about 2 years coding and testing. And then after that, I was managing coders and testers. And I was, managing a large development project that later ended up getting canceled. But at the time, I learned a lot. And so I was learning that leadership, which really helped me when I actually went into the recruiting process, because that's what they were looking for. So if
So
that's,
you were able to sell that,
I was able to sell that. Yes.
and you were ready to be able to sell that. That's the thing, is people, a lot of folks don't recognize some of the intangible skill sets that military have when they first get out, or not even the military service member themselves. They don't look inside and go, no, I have this, and this is what they're actually looking for.
Yeah.
There's that. Sometimes there's a communication gap between the recruiter and the service member that I think a lot of people need to realize. And I think obviously you did that very well. So I think it was important to point that out. Was it Spectrum? Was it, Spectrum Charter? Was that the first company that found you in that arena, or was there a bridge to that?
Yeah, there was a bridge actually. So it was actually MCI. I don't even know if you remember MCI as one of the
No.
long distance telephone companies.
Uh-uh.
And then AT&T. There were several steps in between. And then, so the first company that I went to after I got out of the military was MCI. I was in Arlington, Virginia. And I also became a reservist at the Pentagon at the
Okay.
same time. So, and that was just, to be actually able to say you worked at the Pentagon and to have worked at the Pentagon. I mean, my job wasn't very important because I reviewed technical documentation and typed up letters. But I'm sure it was helpful to my boss.
Yeah. No, hey, I think there's something like 30,000 or 60,000, or basically a whole city in that building. Right.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Everyone, there's obviously a role for everyone. I mean, there's a reason everybody's there. So yeah, my time at the Pentagon, I like to say that I was able to work at the Pentagon. Absolutely. But the time there was a lot of hours that were involved. So,
oh, wow. Yeah.
the pressure that was involved and it's like, we take pictures. Let's be real, compared to this whole thing in the Pentagon, we take pictures. Anyways, I digress. So engineering at a cable provider, what does that actually look like? Is it engineering? Is it well, it's obviously IT because you're more of a software person, or is it, what does that look like when you're working at a cable provider?
So a cable provider has, the classic cable TV has really evolved. And
Yeah.
of course, we know that the whole video experience out in the marketplace has evolved as well. Cable companies now are more oriented around just entertainment in general. And for Spectrum, our really most important product is the internet service we provide. It's not the video anymore. So back in the day, it was actually the video. So when we first got cable television back in the 80s, it was the video service. Well, the cable companies ended up using that infrastructure to the home to build internet service over that infrastructure. So the same infrastructure that carried the video into the home back in the 80s and 90s is now the infrastructure that carries the internet service into the home. So the internet product is actually much more important now than the video product. And the video product is becoming very saturated by competition, as you know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So now you have this infrastructure that you're using for internet service, and that's evolving too, right? Even the infrastructure is evolving.
Oh yeah. Even the infrastructure is fiber.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that something that Spectrum is moving over to as well?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Usually for new builds. So it's pretty expensive. And what Verizon does is actually goes into existing homes and builds fiber to the home. It's pretty expensive to do. So typically what Spectrum will do is for new greenfield, it's what it's called, developments, apartments, complexes, office buildings, we would build fiber to those buildings. It's much, more cost provides much better service in the long term and much more cost effective than coax now. But it's just too expensive to go back and retrofit 30 million homes to fiber.
Yeah. That's a slow build. That would take a lot of investment, probably from both public and private entities, I'm guessing. Hypothesizing.
Yes, huge investment.
So, your Canadian colonel would look about 10 years. Sounds like he would look about 10 years, 20 years down the road for entertainment. Like you talk about, cable is changing. Cable channels are changing. Entertainment in general is changing to more apps, Netflix type of stuff. What do you see as entertainment from a provider standpoint in the next 20 years, 10 years down the road? Is it going to be an app-based? Is it going to be an app-based thing that's going to be on a tablet or a TV, or are you going to have the traditional channels? As this thing evolves, what do you think it's going to look like?
Oh, I definitely think it's going to be more app-based, more individually tailored. The transition that the cable companies are going through now is that you have to buy the bundle, and buying the bundle is what really subsidizes the channels that not a lot of people watch. So the whole evolution into the app industry is I only want a few things. I don't want everything. And that is really going to hurt some of these smaller stations, I think, in the long run, because they won't be subsidized any longer by that huge cable bundle. So that's one of the things that's going to change.
But I think you're also kind of seeing that change in the app space as well, as they're even bundling up.
Yes,
you had CBS kind of go on its own. You had WWE Network. Now they're attaching themselves as they're to like the Paramount Plus or to the Discovery Plus or things like that. So I think. Do you think it's fair to say there'll be bundles, but it'll be like a bundle of apps?
Yes, I think it's fair to say it'll be bundles because people are quickly realizing that it's inconvenient to have 10 different app logons and try to manage 10 different app bills. And that's quickly becoming inconvenient.
We've seen those memes, it's like, okay, Netflix, CBS, all these different apps, it equals my cable bill. I thought we got away from this. So, very, very, very good.
But, I think the future is much like the future that I think is really going to be more exciting even than that is going to be healthcare. I think that the potentially the cable companies and the internet companies are potentially going to invest in some healthcare apps.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's already a lot of healthcare apps that are out there. The ability to manage your health over the internet, I think it's going to be a huge growth area for cable companies. That's just
with COVID, you're already seeing that.
Absolutely.
The VA telehealth app and that sort of thing, where you can have your either your mental health or physical health appointment, in a lot of cases, your physical health appointment, over the screen with your provider, And I think Verizon even teamed up with VA to provide that service for free. I don't know if Spectrum has it as well, but we
don't have a partnership with the VA. Definitely something to look at. We do have our Live Well program, and that program is telemedicine, and it includes counseling and those types of services as well. So we do have that virtual counseling service for people who need it.
Very good. When it talks about your role within Spectrum, the VA has some equivalencies in many areas. The biggest thing being VA's Office of Information Technology, OIT. They manage every piece of tech and information system within VA, computer systems, internet services, digital health record databases for millions of veterans, and the security behind all of that, right? Because you want to keep all that secure.
Yeah.
What's hot in the space that if VA isn't looking at it, they should, and maybe maybe it's not a company, maybe it's a certain technology.
Yeah. I'll tell you a couple of examples. One of the things that we're starting to look at here at Spectrum is, in terms of security, the artificial intelligence apps that nefarious people could use to actually break down your security processes. So we're using artificial intelligence for good things, but there are bad people out there who are trying to use artificial intelligence to hack into computer systems. And so that's going to be a big field.
How are you trying to fight that?
We're just looking at it right now in terms of just an R&D effort to take a look at what it's going to take and probably with other artificial intelligence. Yeah.
All right, DARPA.
So that's one. Yeah. Another thing that I'm very heavily into, so I'll just plug this for a minute. My job is agile transformation. And that is especially for these larger companies that, many companies went agile a long time ago. Facebook, Google, those sort of digitally advanced companies have gone agile. We're never even waterfall to begin with. And waterfall meaning I'm going to do the requirements, then I'm going to do the design, then I'm going to do delivery. Agile meaning I'm going to deliver continuously. In fact, I'm going to deliver something new to the customer every day. That's what Amazon does. That is, for these big companies like ours, that is a big transition. But in the long run, it's much more, it delivers a lot more value to the customer a lot faster. And it's what you need to be competitive. So if the VA IT department isn't looking at becoming more agile, they absolutely, I'm sure they are already.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. I don't really know much about, Facebook and the social media apps and all that stuff, but I see it in my transcribing app for the podcast, because I have transcriptions for every episode, and they release a new software update every week. And it's a very small company, it's very easy to pivot like that. And I think it's totally accurate to say, Fortune 500 companies, and I say it about the VA all the time. It's a big ship with a tiny rudder. It's like, you got to kind of, but no, very interesting. Very interesting. Your bio also says that you're the co-chair for Spectrum Veteran Business Resource Group. What is the mission of that group? Is it similar to other large company veterans groups that help connect veterans within the company together and helps them with their transition, et cetera? I think I've talked about it with Walmart. I've talked about it with Coke Industries and a couple of other Fortune, Amazon. Is that something similar like that, or is there more to it that I don't know about?
It's very similar. I guess a lot of companies would call it like an affinity group. But there is a little bit of a twist to it in that we call it a business resource group because we are really providing a service to the company and to the veterans. So we're helping the company by growing veterans. Yeah. And so there is a business purpose behind it.
So it's not only helping the veterans and the fact that they're helping them transition into civilian life, you're also helping the civilians get accustomed to working with veterans. Is that what I'm hearing?
We're benefiting the company by helping veterans grow their careers. So we feel our mission is that we feel that veterans offer a special type of employee to a company that can help that company be more successful. So our mission is to help veterans be more successful in order to make the company more successful.
Gotcha. So gotcha. Very good. So you're showing them like the from within the company, the employment track. This is where you need to go. This is exactly what you need to execute.
Yeah, we're focused on recruiting. We're focused on retention. We're focused on community. So one of the things that when I first started with the BRG about 2.5 years ago, we did a lot of focus groups to try to figure out, why do veterans leave? Why do they join? Why do they stay? And one of the things that we really realized was that veterans coming in fresh out of active duty, and I felt this too in my transition, when we're in the military, it's a family. I mean, you
Yeah.
you hang out with your coworkers, you eat with your coworkers, you live on the base typically, you hang out at the officers club. And when you go into a civilian career, you lose that.
Yeah.
Civilian companies really don't have that. So what we've done with the Veterans BRG is we've recreated that sense of being a part of something bigger than just your everyday job. And that's been our focus. And also, I didn't have like a very difficult military service career compared to a lot of other people I meet. And so
Mm.
I feel like it's my job now to be able to take what I have and the abilities that I have and help some of those people who were not as lucky as I was, who did not have a good opportunity to have a civilian career as quickly as I did, who struggled with the resume part of it, who struggle with a civilian boss who doesn't understand what their history is and what they have to offer. And so that's part of the reason why I'm involved.
Is it cathartic for you to actually be involved in something like that as well?
Oh, it's amazing. I can't even describe it. And I had really, having gotten out in, the early 90s, having kids, going into civilian jobs, super busy career. I kind of lost touch a little bit with my military background and my heritage of being in the military. And when I volunteered to lead the Veterans BRG. We actually have 5 different, BRG groups. One of them happens to be veterans. I volunteered. They were asking for volunteers, and I think they picked me because I happen to be the only female that volunteered. But I have a male counterpart, and that's a whole different.
Plus, you're ahead of like all the IT within Spectrum, right?
Oh, I'm not ahead of all the IT.
Oh.
I do run a agile transformation team, and I used to run a really big technical team, but no, the IT group is actually pretty a large group. But
so there's some leadership skills that you also have that within the company that you've demonstrated. So
yeah, absolutely. So to talk about what it means to me, just the when I first started with the BRG, I started meeting all these wonderful people that I didn't know were out there, and every day. We have veterans that call us and say, you know what, I'm really struggling with this. I need some help. I'm about to be deployed. We have a deployed veterans program now. I'm about to be deployed. How do I stay in touch with what's happening at the company? And we work on when veterans get deployed, they're in the reserves, Air National Guard. They get deployed. Sometimes they go for a long time. We want them to come back. Right. We want them. Sometimes they don't come back. We want them to come back to Spectrum. So if we can keep them connected with the company while they're deployed, what a huge benefit to that person as well as to the company.
Yeah.
Right? So
100%.
And so if I can, to me, just meeting those people and hearing their stories and like understanding what it would take to help them be successful at charter is a huge, honor for me.
Gotcha. Very good. So I take it there's some education there, both for the veteran, like, hey, this seat's still here. And then probably to the supervisor, like, hey, get a temp or something. That person is going to be back.
Yeah. And it's also a little bit of an education to the manager that this person is dedicated, right? They're a good long-term asset to the company. You need to do your role as a manager and make sure that you're in touch with that person. You let them know if something major happens while they're gone, like there's a reorg or there's some sort of a change. It's your job as a manager to do that. And so we also offer manager training. It's not my group, actually. I work with the learning and development group and the recruiting team, but we have a whole series of training modules for our managers and our recruiters to help them understand, here's how you recruit someone who is a veteran, and here's how you bring them in and transition them in. Here's the challenges they're going to face, and here's how you can help them be more successful.
Very good. Very good. I know you said you were kind of distanced from your military service a little bit, but what is one thing that you learned during your time in the military that you apply to what you do today? And is it something that you didn't realize until you looked back and go, yeah, I did learn that in the military?
No, I think I realized it when I was in, and I've taken it with me through every job that I've had. True leaders, when I think of a true leader, a manager, I can be a manager. I can manage with my brain, right? Managers manage with their brain. They think about, what skill sets do I need? How many people do I have? What's my budget? Who needs to growth areas? Who's excelling? I'm managing with my brain, right? But a true leader has to lead with the heart. And and that's what I learned in the military. I've seen these military, some of the people that I talked about, in order to lead someone into a battle, that is not a brain activity. That is a heart activity. And that person who's taking that person into battle has to take that person by the hand and say, I'm leading you with my heart. I'm invested in you. I believe in you. I know we can do this. And they're not leading with their brain. They're leading with their heart. And I've really tried to take that with me into my leadership roles at Charter. I've had big teams, I've had small teams, or at Spectrum, I've had big teams, I've had small teams. And I always remember that I need to lead with my heart, and I need to meet the people that I work with where they're at. So
very well said. Very well said. Marti, is there a veteran nonprofit or a veteran in the community of veterans, like if someone within the veteran community, whom you've worked with or you've had an experience with that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple. So one of the groups that we work with, a lot of different groups, and mostly in the recruiting space. But one of the groups that I really enjoy working with, that I actually was the first leader at Charter to work with, is Hiring Our Heroes.
Okay.
I think that's just a wonderful program. And I, just for the folks who are listening in and who don't know about the program, it's a program typically it's for people who are retiring out of the military, although sometimes people who are just transitioning use it as well.
Yeah.
And it is geared a little bit towards technology, but not always. And it's also geared towards senior folks, because they are retiring. And there's a lot of competition, believe it or not, amongst companies like ours, like Spectrum and Xfinity and AT&T and Amazon and Verizon. We compete for these people,
Microsoft.
right?
Yeah,
Microsoft.
I've interviewed a lot of them.
Yes, I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
So the Hiring Our Heroes program is really great. It just gives the military transitioning member the opportunity to transition into a civilian job in a very supported way. So they run 3 cohorts a year. You submit.
What's a cohort? What's a cohort?
It's a group of people who are applying.
Okay.
And the companies advertise. There's a huge database. The companies who are interested in participating advertise specific roles and they are roles that will have a permanent job associated with them if it works out for both the person and the company. So those roles are advertised and then people apply. So the people that are coming out of the military apply. Some bases are part of it, some aren't. So it's kind of like an optional program for the base. It's at the base level. And then the people are interviewed and they accept a position as a cohort. And then as they're on their final military leave, they're getting paid by the military. They come in and work for the company in a role in which they would eventually get hired into. They have a mentor, they have a manager, they have a whole support program around them so that they feel comfortable in their new role, and they're supported. So they get a chance to have kind of a low risk civilian experience. And then typically, I don't know what the stats are, but typically they do get hired. In fact, we're getting ready to hire like 6 of them right now in this last cohort. So wow. I actually brought that program into the company, and I just love working with that program. I think it's awesome.
One of the interviews that my predecessor did that I was jealous of that he did was he interviewed Brian Stan, who's one of the board members for Hire Our Heroes.
Oh, wow.
And UFC awesome. Fighter, FS1 commentator, a Silver Star recipient with the Marine Corps. Like, as a Marine, I'm like, that's one of the guys. Anyways, so if you haven't heard that one in the archives and you're listening to this, definitely go check that one out in the archives. And then for you, I think a good one for you would be, maybe give you a little edge on the other of the competition. There is Alex Calfrey, Alex, Opline. He's also in the archive. So check that one out as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone else you've worked with?
Yeah, I do. Okay. It's not somebody I work with. It's a friend. So I have a friend who is actually a Vietnam vet, and he is in a wheelchair. He's disabled. He had really tough military service. He was actually part of a book that was written about, frontline Army combat in Vietnam. Very intense book. And he is so positive. I mean, when I see him, he just has this great outlook on life, even though he's challenged physically. And he talks about his military service, and he tells us all sorts of stories about it. And I can just tell that he he is just so inspiring because he has these physical disabilities, but yet he's such a positive person
Light.
in the world. He's like a light in the world for everybody that interacts with him. And he does speeches all around the Denver area. And he's very involved in the VA. He helps other veterans all the time. And that's his life now. He's dedicated his life to helping other veterans. And he's so inspiring to me.
I'm sure he has, if he's that much involved, but has he been pinned? And do you know what that means?
I don't know what it means. And so I don't know. I'd have to ask him.
Gotcha. We'll find out. It's Vietnam veterans, they never got the welcome home that my generation got, that your generation, even your generation got, with that kind of started, the thank you for your service kind of started after Desert Storm, and they had a rough time, both from, the military, the government, and from their local communities. They never got that welcome home. Here's a free cup of coffee type of thing. And so what the Vietnam Veterans Commission done, it's being run through the DoD, is that it's a small token, but it's thank you. It's a thank you. And it's a pin that goes like a little lapel pin that goes on. It says Vietnam veteran. And it's an official recognition from the government as a thank you.
Wow.
And so I don't know if and they give certificates for the family survivors that a lot of Vietnam veterans have passed away. Mm-hmm. So let me know if he has or hasn't. And we've also interviewed the commission, the commissioner of that commissioner of that commission on the podcast as well. So hit me up afterwards. We'll find out and let me know and see if we can take care of him or not.
Oh, great. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And, I could go on and on about people, but there's also a couple of senior executives, like really senior executives at Spectrum, who are veterans. They both actually happen to be Navy veterans. Our head of customer operations, who runs a group of 30,000 people, he's a veteran. The head of product development for our internet product, which is our most important product, is also a Navy veteran. So there are very prominent folks within Spectrum who have grown their careers, and we have them come in and speak to our veteran community. Our BRG has almost 1,000 members, so our members get to hear from those leaders periodically, and they're inspiring as well. I mean, they served really challenging tours.
Your BRG has 1,000 members within the company.
So yes.
Wow. So you guys are very involved in hiring veterans. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be very interested. Let's talk afterwards to continue this relationship and see if we can't get some more veterans on the podcast here.
Oh, great.
I'd love those. Both of those sound very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Marti, 45. Hey, I love that we're succinct. I love it. Is there anything that I may have missed or didn't ask that I think it'd be important to share?
I'll talk a little bit about, and I mentioned this earlier, but I just really wanted to let all the folks listening know that this company, Spectrum, where I work, really values veteran skills and abilities. And we want to bring more veterans into the company. We have about just under 10,000 right now, and the company is 100,000. So it's right around 10%, a little bit less. And we want to grow that because we really value the contribution that those people bring to the company. And so just over the last few years, Spectrum has made a huge effort to roll out programs like the Business Resource Group, we have inclusion talks, we have community service programs, lots of different programs oriented towards valuing the contribution that our veterans make. And so I just wanted to, just let folks know that Spectrum is a really great place for veterans to work and to advance their careers.
We gotta get them one way or the other. Machine gunner, firefight, bullets fly, day and night rain. Simplify till we die, another campaign. My desk is a rock where the drug lords cut up millions. My pen is a 7.62 round that'll cut them down in an instant. Point, click, pull the trigger to the tune of falling brass. Full benefits and a purple heart and a Russian-made bullet in my bag. Raining down lead, punching that clock. Get 'em boys, I'm laying down cover. Machine gunner, bullets fly, day and night rain. Simplify, do or die, another campaign. Here we go, lock and load, 331, lug 1,000 rounds, and I ain't bringing back one.